I'm working on making some raised panel doors for some cabinets I made in our kitchen right now, and the large bit to actually make the raised part of the panel, it admittedly terrifies me, but using it on my homemade router table, where I basically just bolted my router to the bottom of a board, just wasn't cutting it, and I figured we just need to bite the bullet and get a router table. And I chose the Bosch table because I had actually used it before, and everything about it just looked very sturdy and like it would work well. But I didn't do much research into it, just assumed my router would work with it. It should have some sort of universalness to it, right? Well, it doesn't. And it specifically says it'll only work with 2 Dewalt routers. So when I get it all assembled, go to mount my router to it, and come to find out, yeah, that's not going to happen. So, no matter how you twist that thing, all those holes in it won't line up. Well, I'm not going to spend any more money. They say there's another plate, but I read on some forums that they never actually made it. So basically, I've got this plate here, and I noticed that, well, I've got 3 mounting holes on the base of my router, and there's 3 somewhat clear spots in a triangle shape on this plate. So I figure I'm going to drill them out. So the first step you've got to do here is to actually find where you need to drill your holes. And I found the best way to do that was just put the plate up on top of the base plate that came on the router, and just sort of fiddle with it until you see that the holes are going to line up with a spot that doesn't have a hole drilled on the mounting plate. So you can see right now I've got in the spot I want, and I'm taping the 2 together just so that plate won't move when I flip it over. Now that I've got it flipped over, you can see where the holes are that I actually would need to mount that original base plate against the router. So I just take the only thing I had around. I don't know exactly what this I guess it's all ice pick, I don't know. But for right now, it works as a center punch. So I line it up as best I can to center each of these holes and give it a good tap, and this aluminum gives way pretty well, so I get a nice, easy to see hole there. So next we head to the drill press, and I suppose I probably could have looked at the instructions that told me what the size of these bolts were, but I ended up just taking a couple of bits out of my index and running them through the holes and seeing what was about the same size, and we mount that up in the drill press. Now I am no machinist, but I guess because of that there was probably better ways to do this, but I just lined it up. I've got a little run out in my drill press, so I just tried to average it to hit about the center, and then when you turn it on you can see that you get down there, and that's what your center punched hole is for. It'll actually sort of guide the bit. You can let it move the plate just a little bit to center itself. And it probably should use some sort of coolant, maybe some oil, I don't know. But these bits went through the aluminum pretty easily. So we drilled the first hole, and just got a closer shot second hole. And we have a third hole. So I took it back to my bench, and I just want to make sure that everything lined up. The holes weren't perfect, but there's enough play in the size of the hole that once you tighten it down, everything stays fine. And then before I go any further, just drop my bit in there and make sure it spins without hitting the edges, and it's pretty centered, and it's very close. Close enough that I'm not at all worried about it. Now we need to be able to have the bolt heads not sticking out, so like all the other holes that we already have here, we're going to countersink. And what I did was I just took another bit out that was about the right size, stuck it down in the current countersinks, said alright, this is about right, and chucked it up in the drill press. And we've already got the holes there, so these holes The bit falls into these holes pretty easily. So we've got one hole, one countersink, I guess. And the next. And the next. So at this point, you might be celebrating, and I was too. Like, hey, we've got this finished. It's ready to go. Get it over to the bench again. I set it on the router, drop the bolts in, and yeah, I find that they're too long. Just the threads inside my router base don't go deep enough. I do have a tap and die set, but I really didn't want to modify these, the actual base. It's easier just to buy a set of cheap, shorter bolts. So I headed to Lowe's, and I couldn't find them as short as I wanted, but I found these ones right here that were pretty close to what I wanted, and it turns out they worked fine for the holes that I actually drilled. If I would have gone a little shallower with the countersink, I could have used something longer, but these are fine. I would recommend doing a little more math and checking before you actually drill your holes to make sure you have a bolt that'll fit. So now you just line your holes up, drop the bolts in, tighten them down, and you have a functioning top plate to drop your router right into the table, and you're ready to go. Hope this helped you out. It's a good way for me to save some money, not buying a new plate or having to maybe even send the router back, buy a new router, send the table back or buy a new router. It's really not that difficult. I didn't put much planning into it and got great results. So I'd say give it a try if you're in a position like me.